So in a previous video, we talked about formatting tables in PowerShell when we're dealing with PowerShell output. And we showed a little trick with using the format list to help discover properties of objects in PowerShell. So I want to go back to formatting lists a little bit. We'll normally format lists when things don't fit on tables correctly. And it can be because things are too wide or things are too deep or whatever. Let's go back to what we were playing with before. I'm going to do a get VM, and I'm going to pipe that to get VM hard disk drive. And this should show us all of our hard disk drives for all of our virtual machines. And we see all the properties here. Okay. If I want to see the other properties, I can pipe that to get member, and I'm just going to use the shortcode GM, and that will show me the properties of my objects. So let's say I wanted to pull information that might not fit in a nice little table like this because I want more of these objects than I have room for, or more of these properties. So if they don't fit well into a table, I can do a list. So I can do something like this. I can do get VM. I'm going to pipe that to get VM hard disk drive. I'm going to select the objects that I want. And there are certain things that I know I'm going to need. So I'm going to want, I scrolled the wrong way, the VM name, the controller type, the path. So VM name, controller type, path, and then let's choose maybe some other things that might be helpful. I might want the controller location or the controller number or the disk number or the name. Let's go ahead and do the name as well. That could be helpful. If we've got a pool name, I don't believe I have any of these on pool names, but I can include the pool name. Let me include the VM ID along with the VM name. Okay, so now that gives me a handful of things that I can pull up. And PowerShell, when it sees that there is too much that fits on or too much that won't fit on a table, then it automatically converts it to a list like this. Now, if I don't need all of this information, let's say I don't need my VM ID. Oops. You hit my up arrow to bring my command up. I don't need my VM ID. Say I don't need my pool name, and I don't need my name. That'll throw it back into a table, but if I still want it to go into a list, then I can pipe that to format-list or format or FL, sorry. FL is short for format list. And so that's going to force whatever data I have into a list rather than into a table. Another reason we will do this sometimes, if you look at this, you'll see Windows Admin. It doesn't show the entire VM name. We showed in the previous video how if you're doing a table, you can auto-size or you can wrap text. But when you do this in lists, you very rarely have that issue because you have basically this entire piece of real estate that you can use for the name. So if you're trying to do a format, if you're trying to get data in a list rather than in a table, we use format list. Okay, that one's fairly straightforward. There is another formatting option we have as well, and that is format wide. Now, format wide will only display one property. So I do get VM, I pipe it to format wide, or FW is the short code for it. It'll give everything to me, but it'll only do one property. And by default, it will use the name property. And it does it in, by default, 2 columns. Something that might be better, let's do this with services. So I'm going to do a get service. I'm going to pipe it to format wide. And it's going to give them to me in 2 columns. And it's going to show me the name of all of them in those 2 columns. Now, if I want a property other than name, then all I have to do is when I do my format wide, I specify property. And this is going to make absolutely no sense, but I'm going to do it to illustrate it. I want to do a property status. And so it'll show me the status of all of those in that wide format. Now, obviously, this is totally unhelpful, but it illustrates the point. If I want it in more columns, I can do COL and then the number. Let me do 4 columns wide, and it'll give me 4 columns wide or whatever is appropriate for what I want to do. So let me change that from property status because that's bugging me. And I'll just do names 8 columns wide. And so that's all of my services 8 columns wide. And when you have, here's the other thing, is when you have something that won't fit in that column, it goes ahead and truncates it the way we saw previously when we were formatting in tables. So those are 2 other ways to manage your content or to manage your output, is by formatting wide or formatting in lists. Now I want to show you one more, and this isn't really a formatting option, but it is another form of output that I want you to be aware of. And this, by the way, only comes into play if you are doing this on a system that has a GUI. So if you're doing this on a server that doesn't have a GUI installed, you can't use this, but it's called Out-Gridview. So this is what it does. I'm going to do a get VM. I'm going to pipe this to out-gridview. And that is going to pop up this little window. So same data, just now in an interactive window. So if I click on any one of these, I can sort, I can resize, I can whatever. I can filter by going up here and adding criteria. So let's say I only want to look at things where the state, I'm going to add that, and I want the state to be running. And you see as I type, it's already done that. State is running. And then I can add other criteria or remove criteria if I want. But this will let me work with that data interactively. Now, be aware that this is not live data. This is captured data. So when we ran get VM, it captured it as of that moment. And that's what I'm working with. This is not live data. So if I start up another virtual machine, this isn't going to change to running. It's not that. It's just a way of capturing that data at that moment, takes a picture of the data at that moment, and then puts it in this little interactive grid view. Okay, so that gives you hopefully some other ideas of ways you can format your output in PowerShell.